I've been working on this project about comets for about a week now, and I've been trying to figure out how am I going to present this, because the information that I want to present, of course, is not like normal. It's going to be from my research, so it's going to be different than the comets that most people are thinking about. And I just couldn't get this. And I ran across a video that just put all the pieces together.
I found this on Facebook, and I think it's worth sharing with you all. I kept the original post layout untouched to keep its originality. So they put it up. You'll see what I'm talking about, or what they're talking about here in just a second. And the story, I will scroll to it, starts right here. And this person reached out on one of those truther Facebook pages. There's lots of them where they were talking about the firmament, and they had a military background, and they said, I've never really believed in Jesus or done the whole church thing, but I think I've seen the stuff you guys were talking about here. I just didn't know what it was at the time. This person was in the Army from 1997 to 2000, and they said, I was sent to McMurdo Station in Antarctica. I was a helicopter mechanic and a crew chief, and they had volunteer tours open for guys to go there and work on the helicopters there. When they asked for volunteers, sorry, there's some typos here. I'll try to read it and say what I believe they were trying to say. But it says, when they asked for volunteers, a bunch of us applied, but only me and one other guy got accepted. The application process had a bunch of questionnaires that we had to fill out, and we had to sit for a bunch of one-on-one interviews. It was just a bunch of questions about what our interests and beliefs were. It's weird that they would ask about their beliefs. I was sent to McMurdo Research Station in August of 1998. When we weren't busy de-icing the aircraft and working on them, we had time to hang out with the scientists at the research station. The military unit attached to McMurdo was small, and we didn't have our own separate facilities. We didn't have a PX or a media center. There was no chapel or chaplain, and we didn't have our own separate mailroom. We just had to share the same facilities with the scientists and researchers. So over time, I got to be friends with a few of them. They had two different kinds of ice they worked on and studied. This is where it gets interesting. One kind of ice was the normal kind that we've all seen. They took cores of it out of boreholes in the ground. Just like normal ice, it was mostly clear and sometimes white, and it would melt into liquid water if it got warm. The whole area of Antarctica is covered in this kind of ice. But that wasn't their main kind of ice. The only time I ever actually studying normal ice was when a film crew from National Geographic came by. The rest of the time, which was most of the time, the scientists were studying something they called sky ice. This stuff was totally different. We were never allowed to go into the laboratory areas of the station because the labs had to be kept super clean, and they said it would mess up their work if they risked letting too many people in the lab. But one time, one of the researchers that I was friends with showed me a piece of sky ice. You couldn't touch the stuff with your bare hands because it was so cold. And it wasn't clear or white like normal ice. It was solid blue. He said that's why they call it sky ice, because it was the exact same color as the sky. We had to wear going outside gloves to handle it. The stuff was so cold, it would instantly freeze your skin if you touched it. I don't remember what the temperature he said it was, but it was something like hundreds of degrees below zero, way colder than the normal ice that was outside. He had to carry it in a metal bottle that was kind of like a thermos. He let me play with the piece of it for a while, It felt lighter than a piece of normal ice of the same size, like it wasn't very heavy at all. It almost felt like you could throw it up in the air and it would just float back down. But I didn't try that. And it was also a little flexible when I tried to bend it. It didn't break like normal ice would. And even for a small piece, you could see through it. It was solid blue right from the surface. And here's the really weird part. It didn't melt into water. When it got warm, because we had it inside, it just started to shrink. It got smaller and smaller, but my glove never got wet. And there was no water on the floor. The stuff just turned into thin air when it got warm and vaporized. He said that was the reason why they had to study the stuff right there in Antarctica. You couldn't take the sky ice back to America to study it because it was almost impossible to keep it cold enough. And then they shared a verse right here where it says, "And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it." And then we continue off where it says it would always vaporize into air and you'd have nothing left when you got back to the US, he said. Russian scientists had discovered the same problem when they tried to take the ice back to Russia. So that was why they all had research stations in Antarctica. After maybe 15 minutes of handling the piece of sky ice, it was almost completely gone. Just a tiny little bit was left, and my glove was dry the whole time. I'd never seen anything like it before or since, and that's unusual because I'm interested in scientific things. I think that's even why I got selected to go to Antarctica, because a big part of the interview was about science and what I believed about things. So I really thought it was cool to see something I'd never heard of before. The whole time I was at McMurdo, I heard people talking about the wall like that was a special place. It's pretty common to find ice walls and ice cliffs all over Antarctica. The whole place is ice, but it's all just normal white or clear ice. So I asked my friend where they get the sky ice from, and he said it comes from the wall. I don't remember exactly how he described it, but apparently there's a huge wall of sky ice in Antarctica. He said it was hundreds of miles inland from the coast. I never got to see it myself because I was only stationed to McMurdo. I didn't get to go out on expeditions. He said it was the biggest natural structure in the world. He said that in the 1960s, the U.S. Army had a plan to bore a tunnel into the wall, but they didn't have a boring machine that could handle the super cold temperatures, so they had a whole testing project in Greenland where they developed ice tunnels and invented new boring machines that could operate in super cold temperatures. So this was back when they were going into forming NASA and all the other things that were kind of strange, the Antarctic Treaty, around that time, pretty close to it. And he says, like they did this whole big thing in Greenland for just practice. So it's like they were practicing to bore into the sky ice. I'm not an expert on that, but that's just what he told me. Then, once they had the new boring machine figured out, they brought it to the ice wall, or to the wall in Antarctica. He said that the machine bored a tunnel. I don't remember exactly, it was like 5 or 10 miles into the wall, but that they never broke through the other side of the wall, and that they still don't know how thick the wall is even to this day. And I'm probably not remembering this part correctly, but I think he said that at first the floor of the tunnel was solid rock, but after a mile or two in, the floor was sky ice, like it was sky ice underneath after a certain point, or something like that. And apparently the wall slowly builds itself back up. So it slowly builds itself back up after you cut it, because after a year or so, the tunnel had shrunk smaller all by itself, like a self-healing wound. It starts closing up. They had to leave the boring machine inside the wall because the tunnel shrunk too small to get it back out. And after a few decades, the tunnel was completely gone. Like the part of the wall was solid again. He said that now scientists were trying to use technology to figure out how thick the wall is. He said something about putting earthquake sensors all along the wall, and that somehow you could measure the signal from an earthquake to see how thick the wall is. But he kind of lost me on that part. I never really thought about any of that after I left. It was really weird stuff, but I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. But then a few weeks ago, I saw a map of the wall in Antarctica, except the map was all flat and crazy looking, and it showed the wall going all the way up over the whole Earth. So since then, I've been trying to learn more about the sky ice that I saw and the wall that I heard about, but I can't find anything at all. So now I'm really wondering if there could be a connection here. And that's how I found this group. So I hope that maybe some part of my experience will help someone figure something out. Well, thankful to that person. If they were telling the truth, that is some very interesting information given what we know surrounds us. We know that the firmament is not just made out of ice. It's something special. That could just be something near the foundation to prevent you from going all the way to it. The Father's design is very complex, and he has foreknowledge. He knows what mankind's going to try to do. Those little nuclear bombs they shot at the firmament was nothing to the firmament. They can't break it. They've tried. If they could, they would, but they can't. And this is just one of those stories that confirms a lot of what I had assumed would be going on. I always thought, man, if they are out there and they can go to it, they're probably trying to drill through it. And if they are, how have they not gotten through it already? And that would answer the question for you, because it closes up as you go through it. But this was back in the 60s. There's no telling what they're trying now, mostly guarding it. I'm sure that's the biggest job they have, is keeping us from going there. And if you do go there, you can only go to certain places. It is tens of thousands of dollars for a one-way ticket. Otherwise, many of us would have already gone there, tried to do some sneaking around and investigating. But this video here, it only had like 300 views. But really cool stuff. Wanted to pass this along. I know the days of censorship have it to where you can't find stuff like this anymore. And I remembered putting it in my firmament playlist. I just wasn't sure if you guys had heard about this and wanted to pass it along to you. Answers some questions that most of you, if you're like me, had about what's going on out there and what are some of the properties near the foundation of the firmament, if they're even close to it. Could go on like that for many, many miles. Who knows? We'll find out soon someday. The firmament itself will roll away like a scroll. But that second day of creation, where he put this expanse for signs and for seasons, and letting us know that he will return very soon. And it's one of those things that we're sensing is right around the corner due to the way things are going in the world and what they're trying to prepare us for and all the division. But they're preparing for a war.
So interesting stuff. When I was looking at Corey Good and David Wilcox stuff back a few years ago on Cosmic Disclosure, he had a number of people that actually came on his show and said that they had been stationed at this wall. I'll leave it up to you whether you want to believe this, but the rest of my video is going to go by this concept that we can't leave our planet. We can't have anything that comes in. And so if that's the case, what in the heck are comets? So most of us have seen this picture on Ancient Aliens. And the reason why I use Ancient Aliens a lot is because it really was the place where most of us were first introduced to that our reality was a little different than we thought. But they focused narrowly on a few different things, only a handful of pictures, a handful of sculptures, and gave us a narrow view of it only being from outer space, ancient aliens that came from another place like the Pleiades. But if you take in the firmament, that's an impossibility. So what about asteroids, comets, and UFOs? If they're not coming from outer space, maybe they're coming from interdimensional or from our space. So that got me curious about the rocks that you're looking at. These round rocks, all different size, all over the world. that are in every country and are littered. I don't know, I can't count them, but I know that there's so many different pictures of these rocks that come from different places everywhere you look. I know these could be, some of them, ancient eggs from dinosaurs, if that's what you want to believe, or some large reptilian giant. And that's truly the way I look at things. At one time, everything was much larger. It wasn't just certain dinosaurs like T-Rex. It was the people as well. So we do have a lot of ancient pictures of showing people riding dinosaurs. But that's not what I'm talking about here. There are a lot of these balls that look like they're mechanical. That's the only way to describe them. Like the one that you're looking at right now. Looks like it's a big eyeball. But if you look at the next video, you can see that it probably had these protrusions that were coming out from either side, showing that it is some type of an ancient technology. This sphere reminds me of the Black Knight satellite. If you guys haven't looked into it, Nikola Tesla is said to have been the first one to make contact with the Black Knight satellite in 1899. So it has been observed for a long time. This is ancient technology. They're trying to make us think, just like ancient aliens, that this comes from another galaxy far, far away. But I believe it is ancient technology that we once had and we've lost. So if we really do have a firmament and we can't go out, and we are having asteroids and comets that hit the Earth, and we see them, we see the meteor showers, what are they? Honestly, I'd like to say that I know. I have a lot of theories that run through my head. One is it's an ancient weapon system that the powers that be, when they've had enough of what's going on, they just wipe out certain societies, and through using these giant cannonballs, if you want to call them that, they obviously are coming from somewhere. Or there is this premise as well. The Boogeyman channel has an interesting concept. He talks about, and actually shows a lot of proof on it, that this possibly could be a tether system that is in the sky that has all of the stars attached to them. That's why we always see them in the same formation. But after a time, they wear out or they burn out and they loosen themselves and come crashing down. And that would be something that we would see like a meteor or a comet. But one thing's for sure, if we have a firmament, these things are not coming from outside. They're not traveling a million miles an hour, going through the galaxy, and then just happenstance upon us. They're too precise, they're too round, they're too mechanical to be just nature. There's so many questions that I still have. I haven't completely solved this, and matter of fact, I haven't solved it at all, except for I've got questions, and I hope I opened your mind to some new possibilities of what our realm is. And although this does put together a lot of the destruction that we see around the world, like the pictures that you're looking at, you can see it's been pelted, I'm assuming, by the balls I'm showing you. If you like my channel and my videos, and you would like to support me, please like, share, and subscribe. And if I haven't blown your mind yet, I'm going to throw in Jean Levi's video that I came across at the very last minute, and I think this might keep you up at night.
So today I'm going to attempt something rather difficult. I'm going to take a great and deep look at our realm. Now, I've recently come across a channel, an absolutely fascinating channel. I'm not even sure how I found it. Perhaps somebody recommended it to me. And slowly, over the course of about 8 or so videos, he has revealed what appears to be the position of our location within this realm. And while the masses are debating the shape of the Earth, be it a plane or a ball, this theory that this channel proposes, in my opinion, is beyond both of these theories, and perhaps in a strange way encompassing both at the same time. Again, several videos and so much to touch on. At best, I hope to scratch the surface, and I encourage you to go over and check out his channel. You will most certainly want to watch videos, and I can only expect the same backlash that he has received when trying to explain this theory. And as always, I'll preface this video with the fact that I don't know. These are just ideas. What I'm certain of is what we have been told is a lie, and that puts all other theories on the table. Here I'm opening up with these photos I found. Excellent close-ups of the craters of the moon. And what is the moon? What is this luminary above us that always shows the same side? Many theories and many fantasies told to us by NASA. There's enough videos on that. But here this channel begins early on with the Earth and Moon. And here what you can see is the sun shining on the Earth and creating a reflection. And now this could be the dome, or as written here, the plasma belt. Suspend your disbelief. Let this be whatever your constitution allows it to be. And what we can see is the Earth's image bouncing onto this dome, or inside of this bubble. And this channel's theory, which will be backed up by a lot of fascinating evidence, is that what we see as the moon may simply be the reflection of the Earth on this dome or bubble or plasma belt. And one would say, if that were the case, we would see some resemblance. We would see some kind of continent and be able to match it to our current maps. And that would be the logical idea. I'll cut to the chase and say that his theory proposes that the Earth is 1,000 times bigger, if I'm correct. And what we're seeing on this moon reflection is a depiction in the form of a reflection of our actual realm and the true size of it. And where do we fit into this reflection? We simply being in a small crater in this greater realm. And this channel will take us into the crater, the exact crater, and will show us true layout of our continents and their orientation within the crater, and perhaps more importantly, the way out. And the way out happens to be towards Antarctica. Not surprising, the longest treaty held by the most nations for any amount of time, still honored to this day, keeping people away from Antarctica. And if we do live in a little crater, or giant crater, one could understand how this realm could be both a plane and something greater, in which we can't even begin to conceive of. If this is true, the reflection on the moon could still only be a sliver of this realm. And I think I'll just open with that idea. And here now he's identified which crater is our crater. And it's this little Picus Gallus, and this symbol, this circle with a little pie-shaped part missing. This is actually the way out of our crater. And this is just such a fascinating research just mind-blowing. If it wasn't for his amazing skills with computer software and the ability to take impressions and lay them on top of other ones, we would not have such a clear picture painted, nor understanding of the true nature of our realm. And again, there's a proper way to make this video, and this won't be, I may just bounce around a little bit. But in short, the greater realm, this crater and a few others, tying back to Walt Disney. In fact, in a moment, I'll show you how Disney World and Disneyland are exact replicas of our realm, and how the controllers know this and have known this ever since World War II, at a minimum, when the Germans began launching their rockets up. And this is pretty heavy, and yet with all the puzzle pieces we have pertaining to our realm, this is the greatest one I've ever seen. And again, we can verify this. Now here what he's showing is Antarctica. And when laying Antarctica on top of the right side of this crater, that is where the position of Antarctica is. And in fact, it sits up higher than the rest of our continents. And if you look real carefully to the left, you'll begin to recognize some of our continents. Again, nothing like we've been told. And here's an example of his overlays. I do encourage you to watch his videos. He makes an excellent case of all these scattered and fragmented puzzle pieces together, not only showing us where we exist, but quite possibly the way out. And just unbelievable that Disney, who probably wasn't Disney at all, with a little trimming of the mustache, it may become clear, have flaunted all of this in our face, and perhaps creating a double purpose, both speaking to their people, instructing them, and educating them in a covert way, and on the other end, profiting off of our stupidity, as usual, keeping us in the dark as we enjoy ourselves in this little mock-up of our greater realm. And here we've seen this before. We've seen this in the Mercator maps. We see this symbol depicted all throughout. And eventually this ties into the Wizard of Oz and everything. And this channel researches as he goes along. In the next video, he will quickly correct himself with any errors and new understandings. And again, some of the most fascinating research I've seen in a while. And not discarding the machine and computer-like reality dealing with frequencies and magnetic fields are all playing into this. Just everything being a lot bigger than we ever dreamed. And actually a lot scarier, considering we may share this realm with so many more life forms than we're aware of. Even tying in the fasces here. As we know, clearly a symbol of power from the old world in which our historians really gave us very little information about. He makes some excellent depictions of the path of the sun according to his model and how that may work in this crater. And of course the anomalous time zones, which we've all recently discovered. Great anomalies with our time zones, and I believe it was a 5-hour difference from the rising of the sun in Siberia compared to Alaska. Spots we're told are close in proximity and yet a recognizable anomaly in plain sight. And ultimately this does tie into what are we? Are we just prisoners in a cage? The idea of flying through space at the speed of a Big Bang, wall spinning and wobbling, gives one the impression of being free and insignificant, but yet free. And when we consider the idea of being on a plane, or in this case, a crater, we begin to feel trapped. And hence the reason for perpetuating such a life. Much easier to control the people that feel as if they are free and have no idea they're in a cage. And now this is one of my favorite videos, the second to most recent, where he gives us an overview of the crater. Some of you may recognize this picture. I featured it very briefly with no explanation at the beginning of my last video. And again, the orientation. Here we see our North America and South America and our access out of here. Many of us have seen in the news in recent years all sorts of famous people going and visiting the south tip of South America. And for what reason? We've only speculated. And now when beginning to look at this research, we start to have a better picture and understanding as to why South America and Antarctica are so significant, and for us, off limits. This is the edge of our prison, and we do see such things. Anyone who has photographed the edge of Antarctica sees a giant ice shelf in which you can't peer over. And here again, a look at the orientation and hear why there would be such a delay with the time zones. Part of the truth is what we've been given. And here you get another look at our cell. And here zooming out a little, getting a better feel. And again, all of this, I'll remind you, is based on the cartography and topography of the moon. The moon being our map and our ability to peer into this greater realm. And here we can see Walt and Walt's map. And you see right behind Walt's good old head there, we can see South and North America, just like the moon maps show. And he also shows us the way out of here. And the Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road also being a reference and roadmap. This will also tie into the hundreds of space launches in their apparent strange direction, typically not straight up, but at an angle. Again, the powers that be understanding this. And when we consider the international treaties and laws that keep average people away from this area, this really begins to make a lot more sense and adds credibility to this theory. Let me remind you that I don't know, once again, but I applaud people who research outside of the box. And if people stop doing such things, our future is doomed. And there's no way I could sum up all of these videos, only scratch the surface and perhaps pique your interest to a topic that is the most mind-blowing revelation in our lifetime. And you know Disney has been on our radar, very similar to the World's Fairs and having a part in them. And Tomorrowland and NASA and all these things fitting into this rabbit hole beautifully. And what I have left out is all the beautiful images of the moon lit on top of these maps. And what are the chances that these things line up? Everything being shown to us in plain sight. And just incredible to be able to now go back and watch these old Disney films and make some sort of sense out of what Walt Disney was really up to. So Disneyland just being a small look at our crater, and what we see at Disney World is the realms beyond our crater, and exactly maps that mirror the lunar maps. And good old Walt here telling us all about their plans. Now we can understand all the NASA launches and what they're really up to. We certainly didn't get any good science out of these silly expeditions. Shooting these rockets with airplanes on the top finish the voyage. And Walt shows us where their airports are situated and where the cities of the future will be. Perhaps this is where they send celebrities off after their faked deaths. Here we can get a look at our crater as he's circled at the top in comparison with the rest of the realm. We simply stuck in this little bowl while the controllers are out enjoying the greater realm, leaving us to govern our own prison while they settle the rest of the realm. And perhaps our little crater is prone to flooding every so many hundred years, and this may be why we've seen a mass exodus of world leaders, and we may know where they're going. So here he's circled where Epcot Center is said to be, and here showing the rest of the realm. Like I said, with excellent layovers, certainly something that anyone with a graphic arts background could replicate for themselves. Upon first considering this theory, my thoughts are escape, but I think before a successful escape, it would be wise to research as much as possible to ensure the greatest success. And here is the airport. This is exactly what would be required to send passengers to these further reaches of our realm. Probably a lot more space missions than we've been told about. And here we can see a map of the Wizard of Oz, or the Land of Oz. Very exciting work. It has reinvigorated my interest in looking at close-ups of the moon, and equally my desire to get as close to Antarctica as possible.